Since the 1960s, people in the West have rejected and ridiculed the Bible's teaching on sexual morality. It's one of the great deceptions of all time. In this video, I talk about why this is such a tragedy. When I was a college student in the late 60s, the sexual revolution was just beginning. I well remember the promises and prophecies that were being made. My freshman sociology professor said in class that the lower classes were better off than the middle class because they believed in fulfilling their urges, while the middle class was repressive. Since the time of Freud, the idea of sexual restraint was considered unhealthy, and now the academic community was validating it. I heard otherwise intelligent people say sexual restraint would make your head explode. I read a book by an academic psychologist that said sex before marriage would produce all kinds of positive benefits. It would lower the divorce rate, reduce abortions. Cohabitation, sometimes called trial marriage, would make marriages healthier and more likely to be permanent. More recently, there have been numerous articles on the evils of the so-called purity culture, the commitment to save oneself for marriage. Feminists since the 60s have endorsed female promiscuity as a way of achieving equality with men and addressing the double standard in sexual behavior. And then we have the validation of homosexuality as a legitimate lifestyle, and we even have the legalization of gay marriage. The modern West has been deceived into thinking biblical teaching on sex is outmoded and that rejecting our teaching leads to a fuller, happier life. That is a terrible deception. The consequences have been horrific. It has contributed mightily to skyrocketing divorce rates. If you read social science surveys from the 40s and 50s, you find people saying that a couple, even if they are unhappy in their marriage, should stay together for the sake of the children. But the sexual revolution changed all that. The paganization of sex and family led people to say that divorce was a good and healthy thing, that children were better off in a happy divorce than an unhappy marriage. So if you are unhappy, you should get divorced for the children's sake. In the 70s, all kinds of literature and academic studies endorsed this view. Today, we know it's nonsense. Divorce is a catastrophe for children in every imaginable way. The breakdown of the family dramatically increases a child's chances of living in poverty. They are far more likely to fail in school. They are more likely to use drugs, commit crimes, and commit suicide. They are more likely to perpetuate family breakdown themselves. We owe all this to the sexual revolution and the rejection of biblical teaching. When I was reading the article attacking purity culture, I thought the author made some legitimate points, but I also thought there was one glaring omission in her article. You folks who attack the Bible's teaching, how are you doing? If you reject purity culture, what is the alternative? How's that working out? One question I would ask her. If you practice premarital purity, you do not get sexually transmitted diseases. Is there a problem with STDs in our society? Over 100 million Americans have one. The list of problems they cause is endless. Infertility, physical suffering, transmission to newborns, heart disease, pelvic disorders, arthritis, cancer, and death. I wanted to ask the author if she thought avoiding these things might not be a good idea. As a Christian, I do not deny that there are myriad sexual issues in the church, and I do not have the answers for everything. But I wanted to say to her, neither do you. And you seem to be ignoring some major problems with your own approach. One of the greatest tragedies of the sexual revolution is the massive number of deaths of gay men. Western society has, up until a few years ago, condemned and discouraged homosexual behavior. The reasons are simple. Gay men live very different lives from heterosexual men, and those differences lead to severe outcomes. In a disturbing survey of scientific literature, the Family Research Council found that gay men have a much lower life expectancy. You would be better off smoking than entering the gay life. The average straight man has fewer than 10 partners in a lifetime, while the gay man averages over 100. This, of course, leads to far greater prevalence of STDs. Women restrain male sexual behavior, and every other male behavior for that matter. This restraint is removed in the world of gay men. As a result, disease and death are dramatically greater in the gay community. If you find out a friend has started smoking, you have no hesitation in trying to persuade them to stop. Yet smoking is statistically far less dangerous than the gay lifestyle. Why are we encouraging people to engage in behaviors that are so dangerous? Other consequences of this deception have great destructive power. Sexual immorality results in millions of children born out of wedlock. 40% of America's children are born to unmarried parents. A third of America's children do not live with their biological father. This breakdown in the home leads to a much greater incidence of child abuse. It leads to the degradation of women. It leads to violence against women, which is at an epidemic level, and the pornography industry rakes in billions. The sexual revolution made lots of promises. They have all been broken. In their wake is endless tragedy. God has told us the truth about our sexual natures and how we should live. We should obey Him. I must comment here. Some of you listening to this video have been plagued by sexual sin in your personal life. You've done things you're sorry for. Please understand there is nothing you have done that God will not totally forgive. Psalm 103:12 says, "As far as the east is from the west, so far has He removed our transgressions from us." Verse 10 says, "He does not punish us according to our sins." In my next video, I will defend the biblical view of sexual morality. Until then, thank you for watching. Please check the resources below. May God bless you this day in a mighty way.